important day. This is our February monthly meeting with regard to the Black Forest fire recovery effort. And I just wanted to make sure everybody understands that we're going to continue to do this until we hit our 1-year point. We are videotaping this. It will be online for anybody that wasn't able to attend, that they can actually go to our YouTube and watch this meeting. I'm very pleased to have our county assessor. He's agreed to come by and address some questions. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to him. Click it on.
Thank you, Darryl. Good evening, everybody. For those of you that I haven't met or spoken to yet, I'm Mark Lowderman. Like Commissioner Glenn said, I'm the county assessor. I've talked to this group before, and we've gotten some phone calls lately, quite a few of them actually, and they were generated because the tax bills went out. So I kind of wanted to do a couple of things this evening. I want to explain why the tax bills on the destroyed and damaged properties were higher than what a lot of people were expecting. And also, we're finally, when we originally did the reassessment, it was fairly straightforward to take the value reductions off the properties that were destroyed, and for the most part the ones that were damaged too. We had some pretty good data on the difference between a treed lot and a non-treed lot, and we used that information that we had, that historical information, to reduce values based on people that lost their trees or their trees were damaged. What we didn't know at that time was what the cost was going to be to remove the trees, repair any erosion that happened subsequent to the fire when the rains came. So we can talk about that a little bit tonight too, because we are getting some data in that regard. So we'll start off with the tax bill questions. Then I'll talk a little bit about the damaged tree mitigation and that stuff, and then open it up for questions, if that's okay with everybody. On the tax bills, the reason that people that had their properties, we'll just talk about destroyed properties off the bat, the reason they were probably somewhat surprised when they got their tax bill after they lost their house, everything in it, their trees, and then they get a tax bill that's not nearly as low as they were expecting, there's a reason for that. In Colorado, the only time that you can reduce a value or increase a value mid-year, other than when we reappraise, is in the case of a disaster. So what that statute says is that the property remains on the tax rolls at 100% of its value up until the day of the disaster, in this case of the fire. Then whatever reductions are necessary, that's put in place for the rest of the year. So what that means, what that translates to, is let's say you have $300,000 property with a $150,000 lot and a $150,000 house. Since the fire happened roughly in the middle of the year, if the fire burned your house down but left your trees, we're going to take $75,000 off the value of the house. Now this year in 2014, we'll take the remainder of the value off, leaving the land at the residential assessment rate. We're not going to change that. But to get the full impact of the destruction of a residential property, it actually takes two tax bills. The one that you get in 2014, which is for tax year 2013, and then next January, when the treasurer sends out the tax bills, that will reflect the balance of the value, which was in effect for the first half of 2013. That'll be taken off. So does that make sense to everybody? It's a government thing, so probably doesn't make a lot of sense, but that's how it is. So now we can do two things. I can either take questions on that now, or we can talk about the tree removal and erosion issues, whichever everybody wants to do. You want me to keep going? Okay. Like I said, we knew that the cost to remove dead or possibly damaged trees was going to be expensive, but we didn't have any data to fall back on. For the most part, in Waldo Canyon and Mountain Shadows, the trees that were damaged were on public land, and they're still there just like they were. Removal wasn't a problem. So when we got to Black Forest, we knew we were going to face this, but we basically had to wait until we got some estimates from people of what it's going to cost. Now, I've talked to a number of people, and we're kind of getting a common thread if the majority of trees on a lot were destroyed. I talked to one gentleman that said he had gotten 2 estimates, and he had 5 acres, and all the trees, for the most part, all the trees were destroyed. And one offer was to have a couple of guys with chainsaws come out and cut the trees down. They'd limb the trees, take the slash to the slash mulch pile, cut the remaining trees into fireplace log size sections, and leave them on the property. And the cost for that was $1,000 a day, and for his 5-acre lot, they told him it'd take between 20 and 30 days. So that was one option he's looking at. The other one is there's, and this is just what this gentleman, there's maybe other options, and we'll get to that. But there was another concern that I believe he said was affiliated with Weyerhaeuser that would come out with a machine that is much faster, cuts the trees, limbs them, they'll haul that off, but they in turn take the burned trees with them. And the price on that for 5 acres was $25 grand. So that's the information that we've got now. We're still getting more. So if you have any information on that and would like to share it with me, we can do it tonight, or you're more than welcome to give me a call. But right now it's looking like if your trees were destroyed, it's going to be $5,000 an acre or thereabouts. One of the gentlemen that had as a matter of fact, the guy that gave me those estimates, it was so severely burned, as a lot of you know, it burned the duff on the ground. So when the rains came, he had pretty significant erosion. He got some repair costs for that too. And in his case, they had to replace, I think he said, 2 culverts, and then do whatever mitigation to stop any further erosion. And that was, and they didn't give him a firm estimate, it was between $18,000 and $20,000.
For the 5 acres?
Yeah, for 5 acres. And I'm not, using a blanket on this, but this particular gentleman received $18,000 from his insurance company for everything, for site cleanup, and it cost him $16,000 to get the old foundation removed so he could start rebuilding. So that's kind of what we're looking at. If you have tree removal costs and would like to share them, we'd welcome that information, because the more the better. If you want to give me a call or make an appointment tonight, we can further adjust your value if you've had tree mitigation costs or you know what they are. We can help you out with that on your value for 2013 and 14. So, yes, sir.
Now, what are you going to do with this, these imperial values you're establishing for cleaning up properties?
We'll remove those from the lands. Statutorily, we have to separate every value between land and improvement. The improvement values take care of themselves if the properties are destroyed. What we did on the land side, and that's where the adjustments will be made for tree mitigation, tree removal, and we can talk about that a little bit. In the past, and this may change, but in the past, there was a pretty definite line that the market would pay about, about 30% more for a treed lot as opposed to a meadow lot or an untreed lot. So what we did right after the fire, because we wanted to be proactive, is if you lost all your trees, we reduced your lot value by 30%. Again, that was prorated, so you'd see about 15% reduction last year and 15% this year. If you have tree removal costs or erosion repair costs, that's where that'll be applied on the land side of the valuation equation. Does that help?
Now, is it every individual presents you with a cost to adjust their land value?
Well, I mean, that would be nice. I don't think it's realistic to expect that we'll get that much information. But right now, what we're trying to look for, because we've got a time frame that we have to do this to make sure that it's reflected on your tax bill that you get next January. We've got some time because it's early in the year. But what we're trying to do is zero in on that $5,000 an acre figure. If we can get enough information to give us some confidence that that's accurate, then we can apply that somewhat universally. In hindsight, what we did is and for those of you that I haven't talked to before, right after the fire, as a matter of fact, the fire started on Tuesday. On the following Wednesday, I got all of my appraisers out there, and we inspected 2,400 roughly parcels. And we were looking for damage, destruction of the improvements, damage, destruction of trees. In hindsight, we probably should have been taking a little longer. It took us 2 weeks to do that, which was pretty amazing too. But in hindsight, we probably should have taken a little bit more time on the tree side. The kind of barometer that we used when we did that initial reinspection process was, and I told my guys, I said, if over half of the trees on the lot, regardless of what its size is, were destroyed, we're going to say they were destroyed. What I think we're going to find out now is if there's a wide variety of tree removal costs, it's probably because not all the trees have to be removed. And that's information that we'll sift through and, hopefully in the fairly near future, come up with some kind of a definitive number per acre that we're comfortable with. Yes, sir?
Mark, to understand, to request an adjustment on the land value, is this only the cost above and beyond what the insurance company pays?
No,
Okay.
your total cost is fine.
Okay. And one more question, if I may.
Yes, sir.
You said 2,400 parcels were damaged or destroyed?
No, that's how many we inspected.
Oh, inspector.
What we did is, and I think most of you have probably seen that infrared image that was taken during the fire, which kind of defined the area where at least the heat was. So we used that as a guide and kind of squared off all the corners and captured every parcel that was inside that boundary. And we sent 7 teams of 2 appraisers out and just methodically worked from east to west.
So what was the total revenue loss taxes in starting this year, forget the half year, so going forward, total revenue loss to the county?
Well, as a matter of fact, I talked to the commissioners yesterday about this. When you look at the market value loss, and it's a huge number, and I think it was something in the neighborhood of $120 million if we use the tax roll values. Almost all of that property, or the biggest percentage of it, is residential and is assessed at the residential assessment rate. Now, the assessment rate is simply the percentage of the market value on the tax roll that is taxable. And there are 2 of them. There's a residential rate and everything else. Well, the residential rate is 7.96%. Just under 8% of your market value is taxable. That's the number, it's called assessed value, and that's multiplied against the mill levy to get your tax amount. The everything else, which includes vacant land, commercial, industrial, and all that stuff, the assessment rate is 29%. So when you have an event like Mountain Shadows or Black Forest, where the majority of the parcels are subject to the residential assessment rate, it really waters down the impact of the revenue loss. For Black Forest, and it's about the same for 2013, but the number for 2014 so far, and this is before we apply any additional reductions in value for the tree issues and the erosion issues, is only about $30,000 to El Paso County. Now, it would be higher, of course, to the taxing entities that have higher mill levies. The county's mill levy is just over 7.5 mills. If you look at the various school districts, which is where the majority of your taxes go, it would have a bigger impact to them. But it's still really not that big of an impact because of that lower assessment rate. Does that help?
Yeah, that helps. So the monies that were either via the state and the federal will more than compensate for the county revenue loss taxes.
Right, and like I say, the entities that receive the most money are almost always the school districts. And there's legislation in place that says if a school district's assessed value fluctuates one way or another for whatever reason, whether it's the loss of value from a fire, or just a reappraisal from the assessor where the values go up or down, the schools really aren't too concerned about that change in their assessed value because it's adjusted at the state level. If the assessed value of the school district goes down, the backfill from the state compensates for that. So that's why the schools didn't get too excited about this. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
How do those formulas work on larger parcels of land?
The assessment rate,
Yes.
it's the same.
No, I mean your formulas for changing the value. For instance, mine's a 21 acre parcel, not a 5 acre parcel.
Uh-huh.
So the property, the value of my land and the loss of my trees in comparison to my home is more significant than
Exactly.
if it were just 5 acres.
That's why we did the loss of tree value reductions on a percentage basis. We use 30%. So it's 30% of the value of your lot, whether it's 1 acre or 21 acres. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
Hi, Pix. How are you?
I'm still upright.
Yeah, that's a good sign. Yes, sir.
Well, people didn't lose any trees or their home, but live in Black Forest. Are they affected?
That's a great question, and I wish I had a good answer.
I have it. I talked to 5 realtors today, and they all agreed that they are affected. 2 of them one of them just sold a home to a 70-year-old couple, and she was heartbroken because a fire came through just after she sold the property. The other 4 said they were standing back away from selling homes in Black Forest and wooded areas because people are afraid of fires. They've talked to a lot of people. They're afraid to live in the woods now. They need to mitigate, spend a lot of money on mitigating. Up until then, they don't want to live in the woods. 2 of the realtors from REMAX said they had under contract 2 homes in Black Forest. The fire came through and they turned their backs and left.
I think I talked to both of those guys. Here's what we've done and what we're doing. And when I say what we're doing, this is going to be ongoing long after I'm out of office. For all neighborhoods, between the times that we reappraise, and we reappraise every property in the county every 2 years, the way we measure the high-level view of the way we measure what has happened to values between those 2 dates in that 24 months between reappraisals is we look at sales. And we're doing this right now in Black Forest. I pulled a list of all the sales that have occurred after the fire last week, and there were 200 and something. Let's just call it 200. Of that, 47 of those sales had sold at sale prices that were less than what is on the tax roll right now. Now, some of them were just slightly below $1,000, $2,000.
Is that the market value on the tax roll? Or the
Yeah, market
assessed
value, market value. There were some, and I'll get to this is going to be another problem. Just for example, there was one that came through, we haven't verified it with one of the principals yet because it just happened, but there was a 7-acre piece of vacant land that sold for $15,000. And it was a subject of the fire. It was vacant land now. It had a house on it, the house and trees had all burned. So what we're speculating is that somebody just wanted to dump the property, get out of there, and not address the cleanup costs. And that's something that we're going to take into account when we reappraise. The next reappraisal year is 2015, but the end of the period of sales that we can use is June 30th of this year. So like I say, we're looking at sales now, but about the 1st of August, that's when we will start the reappraisal for 2015. In effect, we basically have the reappraisal done in January, February of next year. The new values don't go out until May, but we'll have the reappraisal for the most part done right after the 1st of the year. We are going to pay very close attention to Black Forest and look for things just like that. There's some other issues that I think are going to play into it. that I don't know if we know yet. Insurance costs after the fire. I talked to a couple of people that have, well, and I'll tell you my personal story, that have had horrendous quotes on insurance if they're in the trees. I live out in Falcon and thought there was no way the fire was going to get anywhere near my house, but it got within a mile of it and we were evacuated. The fire really didn't get into the subdivision Falcon Hills that I live in, but in August, we got our renewal on our homeowner's insurance and it went up 33%. And while I was holding my chest, my wife called the insurance company, and that's because they said we were in an evacuated zone. So, and I mean, you know, we didn't have any damage, smoke damage, anything, but, so that's another thing that we're looking at. Yes, ma'am?
Hi, I'm with United Policyholders, which is an insurance advocacy organization, not
Okay.
for profit. And I just want to say we're very anxious to collect information about people that are having difficulties because there are guidelines. And the events that happen this year are not supposed to affect your rates for 2 years. It takes that long for the process to work, but there are all kinds of other things that can affect the rates in the area. And I know, you know, that's going to be a big deal going forward. And I'm just kind of curious, though, my question was really, I know it's not the same thing, but if you look at Mountain Shadows now with a year difference, can you talk to at all what you see prices doing in terms of rebound now? Are you seeing things rebounding in terms
Sure.
of lot values and things that are selling?
The appraisal term for what you're talking about is a stigma. And in Mountain Shadows, we kind of expected there to be a stigma because it was a big fire, very destructive, same as Black Forest, all of that. What we found is that lots and houses, some of the lots that had houses, the house was burned down and they sold the lot after the fire. Houses that were not damaged or destroyed and sold after the fire, sold at the market prices before the fire. So what that told us in Mountain Shadows was that there wasn't any stigma. There wasn't any resistance on the buyer's side where people were trying to negotiate lower values because there had been a fire in the neighborhood. And I said this before too, about the only similarities between Waldo Canyon, Mountain Shadows, and Black Forest is there was a fire. And that's just about it. Black Forest, the area, the geographic area was so much larger, and what it didn't have that Mountain Shadows did was a very similar type of home. There was still a range of values, but it wasn't nearly as big as the range of values in Black Forest. For the most part, in Mountain Shadows, they were custom or semi-custom homes on residential-sized lots. In Black Forest, you've got just a little bit of everything. Small houses on very large lots, very large houses on very large lots, and all of that. So, and that's going to be one of the challenges for my office as we go through this reappraisal and forward, additional reappraisals down the road, is that there are so many different little sub-markets in Black Forest. We're going to have to look at each one of them. If you want to buy a 5,000 square foot house in Black Forest, you're not going to look everywhere in Black Forest. And those are the kind of things that we need to look at and see if there is any buyer resistance, diminution of value to a certain type or style of property out there in the forest. Does that help? Kinda?
Yes, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mark, can you address the proposed legislation that's at the state to deal with some of this activity? I don't know how well it's going, but there was several bills, I think, that are related to some of this activity.
Well, the one that I am most familiar with, and the Assessors Association has a lobbying group legislatively, and that's where I get most of the information when the Assembly's in session. The one that I'm familiar with addresses a state income tax credit for properties that were damaged either by fire or by flood. I don't know the particulars on that, on what the threshold of the credit would be. I get a report from our lobbyist emailed to me every week, and that hasn't been on the radar, so I'm not that familiar with it. Judy?
Is there any possibility of having a differential rate for people who mitigated or ones who didn't? So that the ones that didn't get penalized and the ones that did get a kudo?
Well, we've
We gotta do something about
We've
these
heard about
unburned
that.
areas.
I've had a few people suggest that there be some kind of a reward program for people that have mitigated.
Yeah, and a
adequately.
penalty program for those that don't.
Yeah, I'm not sure if the assessor's the
No,
right
we say
guy to
that burned
administer.
properties devalue the neighborhood. We'll still do unmitigated properties, but we refuse to recognize that.
Well, I think
No.
as the forest comes out of this, that's gonna be probably more of a concern to buyers than maybe it once was. More of a concern to sellers, that I'm gonna have a better chance of selling this at what I wanna get for it if I mitigate it or have it mitigated.
But what if I know that my tax will be lower if I mitigate than if I don't?
I can't just lower your tax because all the assessor does is assess.
You don't have a magic wand?
I lost it in fire. My office just assesses, and then we pass that information on to the county treasurer, and they collect.
Is there any basis that you have in state statute or anything to do something like that?
Not on the
Or have the
assessment.
commissioners pass a resolution?
There's nothing that I'm aware of on the assessment side. But I know where you're coming from, that, there are areas, very definitely, you can see where mitigation worked.
There
There's
needs to
some where
be
it didn't work, too.
Some accountability. Well, where it didn't work was mostly either because people had embers in their houses burned anyway because of that,
Right.
or because it was just such a big fire from all the ones that didn't mitigate that nothing could stop it.
I think, are people mitigating more?
No.
They're not?
There's nothing going on.
Wouldn't insurance carriers start picking that up? Wouldn't you think that's the appropriate way to
That may
handle
help.
that?
Well, and that's a good point. They may, at least the people that I've talked
But
to,
there's a
they didn't
bazillion
address
carriers
that.
out there all doing different things. If it's a tax thing, it's uniform across the landscape.
That's an interesting point. Sir?
I think some of the insurance companies have already started that. And as homeowners in the Black Forest, I think we are going to end up with that responsibility. The insurance company is going to tell you, and either you mitigate, and if you don't meet their standards of what they feel needs to be there, you need to look for a new insurance company.
That was the most
The thing is,
reasonable.
I know what you want, and I appreciate that, but the insurance companies are gonna cover their,
Yeah, but I'm just saying it's really hard to do this because first of all, you have a mosaic of vacant lands and lands with improvements. Then you have different property sizes, okay? And so what we've done so far is we've done defensible space, which is a little Swiss cheese hole all over the continuous landscape, okay? And the other opposite extreme is to cut too many trees in the wrong places, and then there's no more forest. So we have to find a way to do this so that we don't wreck everything, but we have adequate protection.
Yes, ma'am.
I believe that there has been some proposed legislation for this year from the governor's task force on this that allows some sort of tax credit for mitigation. I don't know if it made it into a final bill or where that is in the process, but we should be able to find that out looking online. I do think there is something along those lines. It's certainly been widely discussed, and you can be for sure that you will be hearing from your insurers about this topic if you live in an area they consider to be wildfire prone.
Well, and this is just my opinion, but I think any disaster legislation that comes about, unless it has a huge fiscal impact, most people are probably going to be on the right side of that, I think. But goofy things happen up in Denver. So. Yes, ma'am.
I have a question. It's a tax issue, but it might be a state thing. The senior tax thing.
Senior homestead exemption.
Yeah, and I just wondered, we lost everything, so now we're living in town. So now, we think we're 95% sure we're going to rebuild, but one of the considerations was, we'll lose that.
No, you won't.
You won't? Is
No.
there a special thing?
Yeah.
It's like, we lived there 35 years, but you gotta live there 10 years, So if we move to somewhere completely different,
No, a natural disaster exempts that. My mom lost a house back in 1999 to a landslide and was forced to move. It destroyed the house. She lived there 20-some years. So right after she moved, that's when the homestead exemption program came about, and she was exempted from that and picked up right where she left off with the other house. So you're good.
oh, good, okay, so whatever decision we make, we get to take that with us.
Yep, absolutely.
I've asked several people and they didn't know, so thank you.
I know.
Okay.
Yes, sir. We lost our home and 4 German Shepherds in the Black Forest fire. We received a tax bill this year, and it increased my taxes for $47 for Black Forest fire protection. Is there something you can do about that to get that taken off? Or and another 2 questions is, would mitigation and the insurance increase influence your decision on helping people with their taxes?
Well, again, I indirectly help you with your taxes. I can really help you with your value, which in the end has an effect on your taxes. As far as what each of the entities, including Black Forest Fire, does with their mill levy to levy against the value of your property, that's out of my control. Every year, every entity that wants to levy against value countywide certifies a mill levy to my office. Then I certify that to the county treasurer, which is used with the tax warrant to generate your tax bill. But the levy that calculates your complete tax is from a variety of entities: school district, fire district, county, and so forth. Now, your best friend there is generally Tabor, because there are a number of restrictions that, for example, the fire district can't increase their levy by an amount that would increase their revenue by more than 5% unless they ask the voters, the people that are in the fire district. I don't recall that they had a bond issue, and I'm not.
They did 2 years ago.
So that might be it. That's what they have to do, though. If they want to increase their levy by X amount, they have to ask the people that are going to have to pay the taxes if they want to do that.
And it passed.
And, well, that was part of your question. What was the insurance and mitigation?
Yeah.
We can work with you now as you're coming out of the disaster, rebuilding, as we're getting more information, and we're glad to do that. Ongoing, and like you pointed out, it's ultimately going to be the buyers and sellers that have the biggest impact on what assessed values, market values from the assessor, do in Black Forest. If the bottom falls out, my office will react to that and reduce values. Like I say, so far we haven't seen that in mass. There have been some isolated incidents where where people apparently did just dump their property. But for the most part, everything is selling, like I say, above what we currently have on the tax rolls. And that involves some properties that were affected by the fire directly with either damage or destruction, and some that were not, some that had no damage and no destruction. So it's a little bit of everything. Yes, sir.
Mark, regarding the senior exemption,
Uh-huh.
leading back clearly exceeded 10 years, it's good that she will not be harmed by that. What about people like we're new to the force for just short of 4 years before the fire? Do those 4 years translate to our new residents, which is still in 80908, but outside our previous buildings?
Yeah, that's another case where a natural disaster
Okay.
is preemptive. If you were forced from your home by the fire, you either had to rebuild or move or whatever. My mom had to do exactly what you're talking about, sort of, just a little bit later. But yeah, you'll still get credit for those 4 years.
So is there any difference in how the land is valued before and after a landowner clear cuts?
No, not right now.
So it doesn't
For
matter?
one reason is, we probably don't know about it. We probably don't know if a site, whether it's improved or vacant.
So it would be the market that would determine that, not
Right.
an evaluation of, well, we had 100% valuation of trees, and we're gonna take 30% off because they burned. So then they get clear cut, so does that make it the same as something in Falcon?
Too early to tell, I'd say. Ultimately, it would be the market, Judy, that would decide that.
So that might be something to find out.
Well,
For you to track.
You know, we've always, and don't take this as a negative comment about the forest, but we've always paid particular attention to that when we reappraised, just because it, with the possible exception of Manitou and Palmer Lake, it's probably the most difficult section, neighborhood, whatever you want to call it, of the reappraisal, just because it's so diverse, and we have such a wide range of properties and a wide range of sale prices.
Well, the reason I'm asking is some of the purveyors of clear cutting are saying that if the land is cut, then you don't have the liability of having those trees on it that somebody else who would buy it would have to cut. You know, so there's an argument about value there. It's pretty nebulous.
That might be insurance value too, not.
Well, yeah, there's a liability argument too, which, you know, I mean, any tree could fall over if there's enough wind.
Well, and anybody that lives in the forest has got some liability.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Didn't you say earlier that there was some difference between a tree lot and a meadow? And if you, for whatever reason, clear cut a tree lot, it now becomes a meadow. Isn't that now different in the way you handle it?
Well, the historical information that we've used so far, and that's to get to that 30%, and it's been fairly stable like that for recent history, the treed versus non-treed. Off the top of my head, I don't know if any of those non-treed lots sold for 30% less because they've been clear cut or if they just never had any trees on them. But that's one of the things typically you don't have to inspect a lot of vacant land when it sells, but in Black Forest we do. We look at every sale.
So you're saying you don't treat the value of a lot any different whether it has trees or it's a meadow? Is that what you're saying?
No, the information that we use is just treed and non-treed. I probably shouldn't have used the term meadow. but-
Okay, so when you clear cut, it now becomes non-treat.
Non-treat.
Doesn't that
Non-treat.
change its?
Yeah, it's the same
Plus-
question I had.
Yeah.
I mean, I didn't think he answered it, that's why I asked.
Well, and like I mentioned to Judy, if we know about it, if somebody calls and says, hey, I'm gonna cut all my trees down, at least with the information we have right now, we would probably devalue it 30%. Sir?
How many years would that be? It would take a lifetime to regrow the forest like it is. I mean, 20 to 50 years to replenish that forest. So how long would that tax break, 30% be?
Well, that's not a tax break, that's a reduction in the value of your
Reduction,
property.
yes.
It would, right off the bat, stay in place at least 2 years because that's when we reappraise. Now, if we reappraise again, and the data still says treed lots 30% less, then it would go on the next 2 years, and so forth. But after the initial damage reassessment is done, and that will probably take a couple of years to filter through all the intricacies with the forest, basically then the market takes over, the buyers and the sellers. And what the assessor does is measure how they react. Has there been some kind of a resistance to black forest because of the fire? One of the things that I kind of expected to see in Mountain Shadows was not necessarily a reduction in sale prices, but an extension of marketing times. That it was going to take longer to sell things up there because there were less people interested in buying because of the fire. We didn't see that either.
Well, some people are buying property because it's a lot cheaper too, after a fire. Some people just want to give their property away just to get away from it. Other people want to take advantage of those.
Well, and that's one of the things, that's kind of potential stigma. And it stands to reason. I thought, like I say, I thought for sure in Mountain Shadows that we were going to see reductions in value, but we never did see it. You hate to tell people, because I wanted to be proactive and get the reductions in place. You hate to tell people, we're not going to do anything now, we're going to wait 2 years and see what the sales do. So we've reacted to reducing the values, I think, as best we can, ongoing with the tree mitigation, the tree removal, that kind of thing.
I was just saying, I hope you wouldn't use those sales on the quick buy scheme.
No, the only sales we use in the assessment term is arm's length. For example, that lot that I mentioned, the 7 acres that sold for $15,000, that would not be, in my opinion, an arm's length sale. And it's an appraisal term too, a fire sale. That somebody is motivated to sell it quicker for a lesser price than to get market value. So if the motivation isn't to try and get whatever the market's paying for that type of property, that sale never goes in the database that we look at.
We've got time for one more question.
Picks.
I just want to point out, some people don't realize the difficulty in your job. And that is, for example, all these lots, let's say you have trees or no trees, a lot of them have to do with access to the property, what's around them, the price ranges, and then have the views been increased, mountain views, now there's no trees. So you got a lot of fun to do there, so.
I will leave you with one story. You can't make this stuff up. My counterpart up in Boulder County, not to pick on Boulder County, but if it was going to happen any place in Colorado, it's going to happen in Boulder. When they had, I think it was the 4 Mile fire several years ago, west of town, there was a very exclusive neighborhood on a hillside, very expensive houses, very expensive lots, heavily treed. And when the fire went through and destroyed the trees and the houses, what Jerry did, Jerry Roberts, the assessor up there, first of all, he took the value of the house. Then he changed the assessment rate to 29% on the lot because it's vacant. Then, because the trees burned down, the views were better, he increased the value of the lots. And he was so proud of that, he wrote a paper in our national publication, Fair and Equitable. How he didn't get tarred and feathered, I couldn't tell you. But,
Didn't he retract that though afterwards? Didn't he have to change it?
Not that I'm aware of.
No, okay.
No. If he did, it was because the markets said, this isn't what we're going to do. We're not going to pay more for these non-treed lots because they have a view. Actually, that action that he did prompted legislation that says after a natural disaster, after an event, that if a house is burned down, you can't immediately, an assessor can't immediately change the assessment rate to 29%. What we've done, and I think I've mentioned some of you before, 2 years in Black Forest may not be enough. So if your house was destroyed, what we've done is leave, for this year, after we prorated last year, is leave $100 on the improvement line. As long as there is some value on an improvement, you'll always get the residential assessment rate. And we did that to ensure that it's ongoing. If some people, for insurance reasons, for whatever, that it takes them longer than 2 years to get a house back on there, but now if they sell it as a vacant lot, that changes. It then will go to 29% because the new buyer is buying a vacant lot. But if it stays in their ownership, we're going to leave it at their lower residential rate.
I'm wondering with the 29% thing, just could argue both ways. On a vacant lot or even a residential lot that somebody doesn't decide to build on, is going to mean that it's less likely to either have the burn trees treated, or something like that, because they've got to pay more money for taxes, so they have less money to take care of the land. So there could be an unintended consequence there.
Well,
The older
I
guy
mean-
may find that all the trees are just going to lay every which way, because now he's taxing 29%, so nobody's going to hire anybody.
We could talk from now until Christmas about whether 29% on vacant land is fair.
Yeah.
Because aren't your taxes supposed to be based on the impact you have to taxing entities, and vacant land doesn't have much. So,
Mark, if people have additional questions, how do you want them to?
if you've got information that you want to share with me, if we need to take a look at additional reductions because of your tree costs or things like that, let me give you my phone number. It's my direct line. It's 520-6627. And I'll also give you my email address. If that's how you'd rather contact me, that's fine too. And that's Mark Lowderman, MarkLowderman, at elpasoco.com. ELPASOCO. Well, thank you very much. I always consider it a victory if I don't get hit with a rotten vegetable, so once again, I persevered.
Mark, thank you very much.
You bet. You're
It's a pleasure. Take care.
Mark, did you say the address was Mark Dot?
No, Mark Lowderman, one word.
One word.
Uh-huh.
Okay, we're going to quickly go through our reports. Our next item is any citizen service support request updates from public services. Do we have any?
There's been no further activity on that website or form.
Just say 4.5 minutes. Thank you very much. Regional building, how are we doing?
Regional building, as far as permit activity goes, we've issued 151 new home permits in the Black Forest area. Of those 151, 16 have been final. I also did a little bit of checking today, and of the 484 plus or minus destroyed homes that we have on record, 400 of those have either obtained a demo and debris or a wrecking permit. So we're making headway there.
That's a good point, because I gave a State of the Region address and we brought that topic up, and the fact that we gave that 1-year grace period. So the fact that at least 400 homes are starting to do something, I think is something to be proud of.
And that's a pretty good number compared to, again, I agree with what Mark said, the similarities between Waldo Canyon and Black Forest are that there was a fire. But that is a pretty good number in comparison to Waldo Canyon.
Where were they at this point? Like half of that?
That might be a fair statement. That would be a hard number for me to really go back and get. But
So 8 months after the Waldo fire.
Yeah.
It's less than it is 8 months after the Black Forest fire.
yeah, and as another comparison, I know all I brought was numbers, but the total number of permits that we've issued in the Black Forest, which just includes all permits, demo and debris and everything, as of today was 1,016. 960 right now in Waldo Canyon. So that just goes to show you that the size and scope of the Black Forest fire was that much more encompassing than Waldo Canyon. Those numbers aren't really significant, but just to demonstrate the size of the fire. Really what I wanted to do kind of tonight was to offer assistance with any questions that might come up regarding the rebuilding process. I know Mark's here as well, so if there's anything that we can do to help with that process. I can tell you that things are going pretty smoothly from what I hear at the building department side.
And we'll defer those questions to the end if you,
Okay.
if you can remember that. I'll put that out there too. Mark, did you want to add anything?
Mark Gebhardt, Development Services of the county. Our numbers are similar and a little higher because we do them a little bit different. We're showing 163 site plans plus 6 temporary uses. As you know, many of the mobile or the RVs people are living in have not sought any kind of permit, so we don't have the best numbers, and we're not out asking them to get a permit. We're staying away. One thing I would note, we are having some discussions. One of the worst areas was Brentwood because they're smaller lots, and we've had a number of people, and one we're in process with now, that are combining their properties of those small lots to try to get them larger, and in this case actually vacating some roads that don't exist, which was really what some of the commissioners' intent was, try to put those together to have less dense housing on well and septic in that area.
Great. Thank you very much. Okay, we will move to our infrastructure repair and construction activity.
I'm Max Kirschbaum with Public Services Department. If you've been here at prior meetings of these monthly meetings, you've seen this slide before. If you haven't, I'll explain what it is. This is briefly just to explain the work that we have ongoing or have completed since the last meeting. Since we were not on the agenda in January, I'm actually covering January and February here, and then the next slide will speak to March a little bit. At this point in time, because of the season, we're really into our normal seasonal activity, which is snow removal comes first. And when we're not doing that, we're doing crack sealing when we can. Our graders are out doing blade maintenance on the gravel roads. And we are doing, when and where we can, some ditching work and some culvert flushing work. That's limited, of course, by temperature of the day. And what you see on here is either, by road name, is either because citizen service requests, or by, we have our own scheduled maintenance, especially with the graders, to hit all the gravel roads in a cycle frequency. So unless there are any questions here, I'll pass to, oh, you wanted to hold questions? I'll pass to the next slide, which is, March will be pretty much the same kind of a story as January and February, again because of season. We will start to see an increase in our crack sealing as we get to some warmer days, and we're getting to preparation for the next season for us is chip seal application. So we'll focus on that a little bit more as long as we're not doing snow removal. And again, as we start to get to the warmer days, we'll see an increase in our pothole repair and some of our asphalt patching as we get back into some better weather. I guess it'll just depend on what Mother Nature throws at us for the next 30 days. And that's all I've got for today. So March is a very routine month for us.
Are you or Tim, are you going to touch on the trees?
I'm going to touch on it. I think John will speak to trees in the next agenda item.
Good.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Yes, sir.
We're going to hold that question until the end unless is it regarding trees or?
It's about the road at Shoot from Lake West Road.
Yeah, you could hold that.
Intersection.
Yeah, you can hold that. We'll get through this. We don't have a lot of agenda items. That'll give you more time.
Okay. All right. I'm not going anywhere.
Let's go to our capital maintenance projects then.
All right.
I'm John Clack, also with El Paso County Public Services Department. And I'm going to give you a quick update on some of our maintenance capital projects. This is Casey Lane. This is just south of Shoup Road. This was totally washed out several months ago, and we installed a box culvert and rebuilt the road, and this project is substantially complete at this point. This is the Shoup Road culvert replacement project. This is coming up. It has not started yet. We're still working on getting property acquisition. I know we're in the process of that, and as recent as last week, we were out meeting with some of the people who own property along here. This will require a detour, so we're going to try and minimize how long that detour takes place. Design is about 95%. Anticipated first quarter 2014. We're thinking it's going to cost about $400,000. This is the hazard tree removal project. This started Friday of last week, and actually things are moving along very well. We've got 6 crews working. About 870 trees have been felled to date. We're currently working in Zone 1. We have a map on our website that shows the different zones.
It's very hard to download, this file so big.
Okay, I have not had that problem. Has anyone else had that problem? I'll see if we can maybe make a smaller one and get it on there. Something I'd like to point out, the original plan was to start in Zone 1 and move to Zone 6, with Zone 1 being on the farthest west and Zone 6 being on the east. We've been working through schedules with Mountain View Electric as well, because they're doing tree removal. And we decided that if we went to Zone 2 next, we would have some conflicts with where they were going to be. So this shows Zone 6 is the next zone that we're going to. That information has actually not been released as of now. We're trying to get that out. We just found out about that today. We've got 3 local subcontractors. One is Gilbert's Tree Removal, Anderson Tree Removal, and Tree Masters. And right now those trees are being delivered to 2 different locations. We've got the website set up, as I had mentioned. We also have a phone number and an email address. Can everyone see that email address? Or okay. The email address is hazardtrees@elpasoco.com. That's all one word, Hazard Trees. And the web address is www.bffassistance.com. This is the map that I was referring to with Zone 1 over here, farthest to the east, farthest to the west, Zone 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 6 is up here. And that's all I've got.
Okay.
We'll hold questions till...
Yeah, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have Tim present, and then we'll open it up for questions with any of the staff reports.
Good evening, everyone. I am Tim Walken, Director of Community Services for El Paso County. I'm just going to touch on 6 or 7 items. Good news tonight. Pioneer Sand and Gravel has agreed to take the mulch that we had left over at the Black Forest / the mulch facility. So they will be doing it over the next couple of weeks. You might have seen them out there already. And so they'll be removing that. It'll give us a clean site then as we launch then in the 3rd week of April with SAMCOM. So we were excited about that. If you didn't see the big piles there, they were enormous. And so we're thrilled we were able to find someone to take that mulch for us and put it to good use. Number 2, we received a grant of the Pikeview Community Foundation and also support from the Black Forest Trails Association to buy a equipment trailer that we'll be using to do various improvements around the community. That trailer will be available, so primarily used in county parks, but we're also open to other discussion on that as well too. But we'll have rakes and shovels and all the tools that you need to do repairs, and so maybe some of you will join us in some of our volunteer projects that I'll talk about here in a bit. John did talk about the hazard tree removal, so I won't spend a lot of time on that, but they are working in Black Forest Regional Park. Would like to ask a favor. We had a little bit of an issue with people on the trail system, which technically is still closed. It hasn't been opened back up since we had the fire. We need to make sure we stay off of those trails at this point, especially when they're back there doing the tree work as well. The active area of the park is still open, still have access to that if there don't be trees in that area, but the trail system still closed. Prefer people not be back in that trail system for their own safety. And hopefully, with the trees removed, we'll be able to take a look at that trail system, maybe reopen part of the trails. Still got some erosion issues, potential flooding issues in summer and fall, but hopefully we can open up part of the trail system as we go along. But the first key step was to remove the hazard trees, and we're well on our way with that. You will see a lot of the logs left on site. We're going to use those for erosion control purposes for the volunteer projects that we have, so there will be a lot of those out there at this point, but they'll come in very handy for us as we go through our work in the spring and summer to control the flooding issues within the park itself. We're looking also, and I've had some questions about the Pine Ridge open space, and we have also burned trees in that area as well. That was not open to the public, so we don't have any trees next to trails. They were classified as hazard trees, but certainly from an aesthetic value and our need to remove those, we're looking at maybe some creative opportunities and working with the private sector to do that. And so we're exploring that at this point. And maybe there's some interest in some of those burned trees by the private sector. They might be interested in using those at not a great cost to the county. So I'll give you more updates on that as we go along with that. A number of volunteer projects coming up in the spring and summer with County Parks, Trails and Open Space Coalition, and Rocky Mountain Field Institute. Dates are listed up there for you. Volunteers are welcome. You come use our new trailer with the tools. And you'll see it on all of their websites and on ours as well. So we'd like to encourage you to come out. Volunteer Outdoor Colorado will also be out on June the 14th. They do a marvelous job and bring people all over the region to come in as well. So we're excited to have them back. They were with the park last year as well. The playground should be reopened in the spring of 2014. We had to wait until the ground wasn't frozen, and hopefully that will take place over the next month or so. Then we'll be out to pull the rest of the 5 bar, the wood chips below the playground out, put that back in and reopen that for those of you that have kids that are anxious to have that reopened again. And Judy also approached us as well about the possibility of talking with Mountain View Electric about all the mulch they are creating as well through their forestry work. And maybe there's some community purpose that we could use that for. We've been meeting with them next week to talk about that. And Judy indicated that she felt like that mulch should be a little higher quality than what we produce at the Samcon facility. So we'll chat about that and see. Certainly we got a breakthrough with having the old mulch moved out. Maybe there'll be a little space for that as well, but we'll talk to their staff and see if that's a possibility. So those are my updates for tonight, Commissioner.
Thank you. I'll now open it up for any questions with regard to the staff reports. Yes, sir.
To you, regarding the permits, we had a permit turned very quickly, thank you. I mean, excellent streamlined process. But we're building outside fire area, north of Hodgson Road. Was that number, or all other people building in 151 new homes, or are those only in the burn area?
The 151 number that I gave you is only the addresses that were destroyed.
Permitted, okay,
Yes.
all right, okay.
Yes, so, and that's not only within inside the fire boundary, it's specific addresses that we evaluated have been destroyed. So yours would be outside of 151. But still, if we can do anything, assist you with that part.
It was no problem. It was extremely smooth.
That's good to hear. Sir, do you have a question? Go ahead.
I have a question for both of you gentlemen. Okay. Concerning the Burgess and Black Forest Road, where the intersection was widened there. You created culverts going down. So people on down where the water's going to eventually come out when it rains, they're really concerned about being flooded out.
To the north, is that where you're talking about?
Where it goes to the pond?
North of Hodgins. North of Burgess. I'm sorry, Burgess.
Where the pond is? That
No.
drainage?
North of Burgess on Black Forest Road, they created, I've been there 21 years, I've never seen it flood. Now, when the water comes down, it's gonna go all in one direction, down Black Forest Road north. Then when it goes out of the culverts, they're going into these people's property, they're
You
concerned
mean
with it.
when it overflows the culverts? Is that what you mean?
It's about three properties down, and the water's gonna come out right there.
By the subway, right?
Yeah.
Yes, just below that, yes.
Commercial area.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They're really concerned about it, and I was hoping you guys would look into that to stop the problem before it creates a monster.
Is it the water flowing in a different direction than it was before? Is that what you're
It's
saying?
going to. Oh, yeah, it's going to. Believe me, when it rains up there, it rains.
Well-
And they are really concerned about water coming in their homes and all over the property and making big ditches through their properties. If you just go take a look, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. They just asked me if you would take a look. They're concerned about that. This summer it's gonna happen if you don't.
We'll take a look at that. Thank you. Yes, ma'am?
I have a question for regional building. One of the issues that people who are rebuilding are faced with in terms of capturing their insurance dollars are code upgrade dollars. So additional dollars, right, that you may be able to recover from your insurance company if you can demonstrate that current code requires you to spend more than your house when it was built. And I know you guys have done some work toward helping people identify that. Can you just describe where that stands right now, what you're able to do to help people or their builders with that? Do you have maybe a chronological list of code upgrades that have happened over time to help come up with that?
Don't have a chronological list, and I wish that you did do that. I wish it was that simple. The current code that we're under is over 900 pages.
Right.
So, and to compare that to previous codes is pretty difficult. You know, we've tried to approach it in a couple of different ways, and it kind of comes down to we're trying to offer different options as far as how to rebuild your home. Really, and one of the things that makes it really difficult is we don't have records of the homes that were lost, of all the homes that were lost, because a number of the homes were built prior to regional building having any jurisdiction out there, so we don't even know what was over there. But the service that we do offer is, if you want to rebuild the house that was there, if you want to rebuild the exact same house you had, and we have plans, or you can generate plans, then we'll work with you to get maybe just a couple minimal life safety upgrades in there. And we'll sit down with you and go over those. If you want to build a completely new house, then we have provisions for that too. But if you run into something like that, or a situation like that, sometimes it's easiest just to talk with us specifically about what the issue is. You know, the other thing that can be really difficult is the building codes are code minimums. Not everybody builds to exactly what the minimum is. So while the rise and run requirements of the stair have changed, it doesn't mean that the rise and run and the stairs that you had in your old house didn't comply with the current code requirements. Does that make sense?
Yes, but I think the challenge that people face with regard to the insurers and capturing that money is to be able to say, my home was built in 1975 and it required R10 insulation, now it requires R17, how much, and then the builder can determine how much that cost difference is and add that to the face value of the insurance policy. So before they can do that, we obviously have to get from you guys some guidance as to what those changes have been in that time frame. The responsibility is on the homeowner and the insurer to just, show what they had. But the code upgrades themselves, that having something like that the builders can use and the homeowners that are trying to rebuild is an extremely helpful thing in allowing people to recover enough money to help them rebuild.
This is a really important issue.
I do understand that, and we went through the exact same type of scenario with the Waldo Canyon fire. And honestly speaking, you mentioned insulation. Just to tackle it from an energy code standpoint is an incredible undertaking in its own right. The code committees that even write the model codes, in recent years, they've published books that kind of go over the significant changes in the codes. But those only cover the significant changes to what somebody feels significant.
Right.
There really isn't a way to build a matrix that would dictate the code requirements.
What about a list of categories, like plumbing upgrades might include blah, 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 insulation upgrades might include blah, 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 roofing upgrades might
Right,
include blah, blah,
ones
blah.
that have
So at least you know where to
ground-
start, or what to look for, because, like,
Well-
okay, so my house had copper plumbing, and now it has to have, some other kinds. Or, it had a Class A composite roof, and it's gotta have something else, but at least give us some place to start.
Since when, though?
Yeah,
That's part of the
that's
problem.
Well, that's-
Series of adoptions of.
Right, well,
building
that's
codes.
for us to figure out. If I have a house that was built in 1970 and Richard has one that was built in 1982, but at least if we know kind of what to look for in different categories, we could figure it out.
They're not dated, are they? No, and that's, so a house that was built in 78 is gonna have different requirements than a house built in 82, 85, and so on. And,
Well, let me ask you this, if it was built since you guys were involved in Black Forest, so for some of the older homes, there may be other challenges, but
Yeah.
at least you can start at the date that you guys were involved.
and that's an easy one, because then we should have a copy of the plans.
So often, if you just start with the big items, in the timeline that you can track them, that may hit that 10% or 20% that your policy
Even then,
would allow.
I can't even provide that going from the last code that we were under, which was 2003 code. We're under the 2009 now. It's an undertaking that I don't think has even been done on a national level.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
In so much as, unless you've changed it, anytime that the property has any kind of damage or otherwise, or you're rehabbing it, 50% or more?
No.
You have to bring it up to code?
That used to be, I think that used to be in the code, maybe prior to my time. I've been with the building department 11 years. The way that the code is written is, when you're doing a remodel, an alteration, whatever, the work that you're doing has to be code compliant. We're not gonna go in and say, oh, you gotta change that too. Well, it's only the scope of work that you're doing. The one exception to that would be, if you're doing, the only exception I can think to that is, if you're doing work inside the home that requires a permit, the building code does require you to install, current smoke detectors. That's the only thing that would go back. But that 50% thing is gone. You could do an addition to your house like this, 3 times the value of the home, and only the addition is what's gonna be looked at. Does that answer your question?
Oh, yeah, because a lot of those properties were damaged to the point that,
And
they had to
we-
bring them all up to code, that'd be,
We got rid of that because it's so difficult to determine that 50%.
Yeah.
What number do you really base it on, and what does that really have to do with it? So, yeah, that's long enough, just to scope of work.
I don't know if it's a question or a comment. My understanding from my insurance company was on mandated code upgrades based on the urban interface and, living in the treed areas. He led me to believe that if they asked for El Paso County Regional or the forest or the fire department wants you to do something and it's mandated, as a code changed after the fire, that's what they were gonna pick up as far as code upgrades above and beyond the normal codes.
You know, I can tell you that that is historically not accurate. As a matter of fact, generally speaking, because it's a contract, once the event happens, any changes or mandates that happen after the event, they would not cover as a code upgrade. But many insurers, because they want the new home to be more fire resistant or whatever, or because of pressure, they will include that. But it's generally only the difference in the codes from when your home was built to when the event happened.
Well, wait.
That matches what I
Yeah,
heard
it was
too.
recommended code upgrades by whoever is what they were looking for, whether they're mandated or not. I think I talked to this gentleman before, by the time it would take to get these codes changed on the books, well beyond your period of what
Recovered, yeah.
recovery. So I think some of them are voluntary, and it's something to pick up the cost.
Yes, but that's like totally kind of up to them or up to.
Now this, I have,
corporation or-
my insurance company is Farmers, and this is the way the guy explained it to us. You know, whatever they recommend, whether it's a code change or not, if there's an upgrade that they recommend, they will pick that up, the fire worthiness of
I can tell you from a regional building perspective, at least from building electrical, plumbing, and mechanical codes, the codes have not changed since 2011, and are not going to change for a while because it's not a fun process.
Right.
And we don't have recommendations. I guess my recommendation would be that you follow the code.
Yeah.
And
No, and there's not that significant
Yeah.
a change in the codes over the years. I mean, there's some R values that obviously change,
Yeah.
some windows have changed, some plumbing things, but they're all minor in scope. It's the fire stuff.
Is that except for no wooden decks? I mean, is that code or is that there's city ordinance?
there's nothing, what you're referring to is a hillside ordinance
Hillside
in the city of Colorado Springs.
That was in the proposed code that wasn't passed.
Okay.
Actually, well, with the city of
No,
Colorado
it's, no, in the
Springs,
county.
right, with the city of
Only
Colorado
Black
Springs, it
Forest
did go
one.
through,
Yeah.
but
Right.
not in
Not in the county.
But I will tell you that sometimes insurers will pick up additional costs for fireproof materials, so it doesn't hurt to ask.
That's what I was led to believe, and I had this discussion with you, I think at the Pinery one night, about the codes, and that's how you explained it to me. You're not mandating anything, you're not changing codes, you're not upgrading codes. But then it was the fire department had some recommended changes that they would like to see implemented. But that's so far down the road, it'd be beyond what the insurance companies would have.
Right.
Their recovery time. So it's basically, you get those recommendations and you incorporate them into your new building plan, and the insurance company's supposed to be able to, pick
Well,
those
it
up.
depends on the insurer.
Yeah.
It's a good idea.
Go ahead, it's in their best interest to have a question in the fire-worthy home.
Yeah, I was gonna say, we're not working with this particular builder, but there's a builder that actually go in with your split clause, and he has software where he puts all your information in there, and he can pick off the upgrades and the stuff, and like, if he has software for that, why don't you have software for it? I mean, it's like, you go and inspect and you know what we're supposed to have, if you could even have what we have to have, and not everybody, we built our house 35 years ago, and we know what we have in our house, because we were the contractor.
Sure.
And so, and not every, people, the houses get bought and sold and remodeled, okay? But this builder actually puts these numbers in, and they pop out at him.
I would be interested in that, I've never heard of it, I don't know.
It's Stoffer and Sons, and he's built, I don't know how many over in Orlando, and now he's starting to go, but that was one of the things that he can help you with to get that additional money for the upgrades, and so
Well,
I mean,
And
get
people are
to be
finding
friends.
ways.
Yeah,
People are finding what builders are finding ways, and they're using the software that the insurance company uses, which you can get on a trial basis. So there's
Yeah.
there's ways, but you really need the legitimacy of understanding when those codes came into being.
Well, I can tell you,
guess.
so when codes came into place, yes, absolutely, that's something that I can help with. It's actually, it's on our website, and I can help with when specific codes came into place. What
But
the
if you
exact
could just
difference in
partnership
requirements.
And
Sorry.
instead of being adversaries, being a partner, with.
Well, the way that I personally see it is that the building department, my personal side of it, I don't want to be any more invasive in anybody's home or project than necessary.
Okay.
And personally, I also believe that the private sector should be what drives all of this too.
Okay.
That's one of the reasons that regional building has chose to stay out of any code changes throughout this process and throughout Waldo King, because we would prefer that the industry, that the public drive those changes and those requirements. So it's not that I don't want to help. Obviously, the industry has found a solution here that I wasn't aware of, and if I knew that, I would definitely say something.
Okay.
To address one of your other comments, our inspectors and our plans examiners are all very knowledgeable in the current code that we're under, which currently is the 2009 international codes. We're knowledgeable under that code. When we change codes, it's kind of like you got to delete what you know and go on to the next code, because there's only so much room. It's shrinking. So it's kind of tricky. But if you have specific questions, we'll help you research. And we have copies of the codes too, so we can help with the research process. But it would be a task almost on a national level to go back and identify what the changes have been throughout the years. So my head's going.
I wonder what other states and other cities have done that have lots of fires.
I don't know, and that's kind of one of the questions that we've had throughout the process. And I've started to try and research it, and then something else comes along and I get sidetracked. So I don't know. It's a great question.
Okay, like in California where they have fires every year.
I think that a lot of times in California seems to be very reactive to fires, and when they do it, you go back right to the current code, it doesn't matter.
Oh.
Any last questions on these staff reports before we move on to our next item?
I have two questions. One is for you.
Okay.
On the Chute Road culvert, you said you were going from one 36-inch culvert, which plugged up really good during the flooding, to 5 or 6 36-inch culverts. I think that a better approach would be to put something that will accommodate the sheet flow that comes down through that valley. If you put anything in it that's going to impede the force that water has carrying that sediment, is going to drop the sediment. So if you put a step structure right in front of the culverts, it'll just, build up, and you'll have 6 plugged culverts, and it'll still go over the road. So that's how I see it from the dynamics of what I know about hydrogeology. And I would suggest something like either large, low box culverts or a long, low bridge that just allows the water to go underneath. Because it's going to do that. That's why that meadow's there. It's going from one broad meadow with the road blocking it to another broad meadow, and you need to let it go through. So that was just a comment on that. And then for Tim, you said, I think your words were that you were looking into, for the Pioneers open space, hazard tree removal that includes allowing mutually agreed upon tree removal at no cost to the county. How does the Palmer Land Trust that owns or holds the conservation easement fit into these decisions?
Certainly have to discuss it with them as well too. I think they'll be in favor of the hazard tree removal overall, but we'll have to, be partners with them as we go through
Will
the
this be a
process.
mechanical removal or a chainsaw
I
removal?
haven't nearly gotten that far yet, Judy. It's just our thinking is it's closed to the public at this point, so we don't have that issue involved in that at this point. And we honestly can't afford to go in there and remove those trees ourselves. There's no FEMA money involved because it wasn't open up to the public, and so we have the financial side as well too. So we're going to have to think creatively, and that's just one thought that we've had. We've had some discussions with some private sector firms who said we might have some interest in coming out there and removing those trees and utilizing those for a variety of possibilities. We'd like to explore all of that. But we're not anywhere near the point of deciding
Are
exactly how to do
are
that.
you in communication with the HCB Sanctuary and what they're gonna do?
I haven't talked to them yet either as well, but it's a good thought. Maybe there could be a cooperative effort taking place there. So, and you may have some ideas for us as well.
Yeah, I know a lot about what's going on, that's why I'm asking this. So, okay.
Great, thank you very much. Yes, sir.
I have a question for the gentleman. Sure. The tree removal contractors are up there, they're under a contract to take care of the land, not destroy it, and they're using skid loaders all over the place, tearing it up. And when the rains come, it's gonna be a muddy mess. It's gonna wash out a lot of the land away. They're supposed to use the skid loaders in designated areas, and they're using them everywhere.
We're talking about Black Forest Regional Park.
Black Forest, period.
Okay. Oh,
Now, I guess I'd like to say that we do have a requirement in the contract that they have to go back and reseed. So,
But they're not to use skid loaders in certain areas, and they are.
we'll have to check.
If they reseed or not, the land is still gonna be torn up and loose underneath, and when it rains, it's gonna wash it away anyway. It won't reset itself.
It's gonna be really ugly.
John, what I recall in the park itself, that we had restrictions in there on the type of equipment they could use and so forth off the trail. Are you in agreement with that?
Yes.
Okay. I'm
They,
sorry.
but they were, even at the pre-construction contract meeting, they were essentially given the leeway to operate wheeled equipment as long as they remained on or very near the trail
You say
itself.
wheeled or skid loader? It'd be
Wheeled.
wheeled as wheels, and
Wheeled.
skid loaders as skid loaders.
That's what skid loaders are.
Skid is
Or
wheel.
traps.
Okay, but I saw, there are a lot of skid loaders out there. We had the media thing last Friday, and they weren't on the trail.
Skid loaders are wheeled.
No, I'm talking about like a tractor has a wheel with an axle. That's a wheel.
They're all
Skid
over.
loader is a track vehicle.
Not necessarily.
Yeah, there's both.
So say track vehicle or
Okay, well, track vehicle.
wheel vehicle.
They have
Use
wheeled
those
or
two,
tracks.
use those designations, and we can talk until.
They were given, the leeway for a tracked or wheeled vehicles in the park, and they were allowed to remain on or in the vicinity of the trail, and that was it.
So the trail corridor was 120 feet, correct, 60 feet on each side.
Right.
I have a question for this gentleman, about the codes, and things like that. Several of us concerned about the codes, that we lost our homes, but we don't want to lose our grandfather law clause on our properties. Is that going to be protected?
We don't have any type of grandfather clause.
Who do we see, just find out?
Grandfather clause as far as,
As far as what?
yeah, as far as rebuilding.
As far as the grandfather law, it was on the news about 3 or 4 weeks ago about maybe the grandfather laws will disappear now because we all got burned out. I don't want that to happen.
Applying to what, setbacks or
Pardon?
setbacks or type of height or what?
Size of lot?
What we can do on our own property, what we can build or not. The grandfather law. The law that's been there for since day one, forever.
Since your
We don't want to change.
Like a property that normally wouldn't have been approved through the normal approval process that was grandfathered in because it was a pre-existing structure.
Well, the terminology is non-conformity. Grandfather is not a law. There is no law that says grandfathered. It appears in many different laws that what you had, you can continue to have. What the county commissioners did is for the one-year time period that you talked about, and they can revisit that as we get closer to the anniversary, said the commissioner's intent is to allow you to replace what you had to the greatest extent possible, which is equivalent, which people's concept of grandfathering. So if you had a 3-acre parcel and you needed 5, where the zoning says 5, you're okay with that. That's still in effect. If you were 10 feet from the property line with the old building, and the rule says 25, the commissioner's intent to the greatest extent practical, and practical instead of possible, was
already
to
know that.
allow you to rebuild at that same location. And that's the way we've been issuing or approving site plans and building permits.
When your property's only 100 feet wide, can you get a hardship variance?
Those remain available, yes, if you even have to have them. Now, the one thing the commissioners did not do, and in some ways don't have authority for, is if you're 100 feet wide and 100 feet deep and have to have a 100-foot distance between your well and septic, you got a real problem.
No. Well, it's long property, 2 acres long property, but only 100 feet wide.
And where was the building before? How close was it to the property line?
12 feet.
And the commissioner's direction to our department was try to allow to have you be able to go back in the same location, not closer than 12, but the same location. And the other part, in most of Black Forest, there's a 200-foot lot width. You were already only 100. Allow you to go back into the same location, not have a special variance that you have to go through.
Great. Thank you, appreciate that question.
You make it into a shooting range.
No, don't open that, please. We're gonna go to item number 3, and that's, if we have any community partners that wanna make announcements, Black Forest Getting Ag, Pollsville, or Aspen Point, you name it, just take your turn, step up.
I just want to already introduce myself, United Policyholders. I just wanted to let everybody know, first of all, that we have another meeting coming up on March 6th from 6 to 8 p.m. at the Woodman Valley Chapel East Campus, which is off Marsh Shuffle and Woodman. The topic for this one is dispute resolution. So if you are frustrated or in a dispute over your insurance proceeds or lack thereof, over or with a contractor, with a restoration company, anyone like that, we are going to be bringing in people who do this and have done this professionally. They will not be soliciting your business. They're just coming to give their advice and answer your questions. We will also have DORA, the Division of Regulatory Agencies, Department of Insurance, will be there as well to talk about the rules in Colorado that apply to things like insurance recovery. And so this is an opportunity to be heard by the Division of Regulatory Agencies about your experiences and get your questions answered. So I would encourage you to come.
And that's disputes on property, not with your spouse or significant other.
That's right. That's not social disputes. And that's contract or legal disputes. And then in April, the next one, the topic is going to be getting every dime. So this will be an opportunity to, again, get some expert insight and advice from people who have been there and done that, because most of our speakers have actually experienced the loss themselves, and that's what brought them into wanting to pay it forward, about how to make sure that you're taking advantage of all of the opportunities you have to get dollars to help you recover in a legal and appropriate way. We like to say not a penny less and not a penny more. So that will be in April and will be posted along with the county. And then I have got a box of our yellow disaster recovery handbooks and that I'll drop off at Black Forest together, but I've got them here right now, so if anyone, whether you lost a home or you just know someone who did or you help people who did, please let me know and I'll make sure you get one. If you raise your hand, I've got some with me right now. You don't have one of these.
I collect them all.
So that's it, thank you.
Judy, go ahead.
I just wanted to say a word about the Black Forest Recovery, Forest Recovery Team Symposium, which was held at the beginning of March, or beginning of February. There's another one at the beginning of March on the 8th. And we had about 150 people at the last one. It was quite well attended. And we had topics including tree planting, the conservation forestry alternative to the removal of trees rather than the clear cutting options, and so on. So I just wanted to mention that because we didn't have it on the agenda for the garden. So there'll be another one in a week from Saturday, Walford at 10 o'clock. 10
Thank you. Does Aspen Point want to say anything? All right.
Hi, my name is Meg. I see a lot of familiar faces tonight, which is awesome. I'm here representing Aspen Point's Black Forest team. We are out in the community every day, so you probably recognize the blue shirts. We are providing some crisis counseling and support services to everybody who lives in the Black Forest community and was affected by the fire. So I have a few brochures here, and I will maybe leave a few back there too, so feel free to grab those and utilize this as needed. So thank you.
Don't forget the animal.
Yes, and we actually do have a couple events coming up, so you'll see our flyers at Crosses for Losses, BFT. We have an event coming up for the pet owners. So if you have any pets that you feel were displaced during the fire or were affected by the fire, we have a veterinarian and a person who does some kind of pet massage, kind of pet therapy, and they're coming to kind of just talk a little bit about how the fire affected pets. So that's going to be on March 8th, and then on March 28th, we actually are going to have a group for couples who are kind of trying to move forward in their relationship after the fire has affected them. So take a look out for those brochures, and then it should be around.
And the March 8th one's at La Monterey from 3 to 4 in the afternoon.
Yep. So that's coming up.
It's the same, no, that's the same day, but Walford one's from noon till 12, and then you get to go eat lunch, and then you can go do the dog one from 3 to 4.
Excellent. Any other community partners that want to make an announcement? Okay, we have a brief amount of time for just any open comment.
I'm Rich Painter. I know some of you. My wife and I suffered a total loss. And part of the problem is we've lived in 7 places since the fire. And what we rapidly discovered, and I predicted the day after the fire and notified some of the commissioners about, was we would have a real problem with the Postal Service. Well, let me tell you how that's extended now. Those people who are displaced currently anywhere in Colorado, floods, fires, whatever, and have a temporary address in some way or a forwarding address, regardless of whether they intend to get right back on their property or it will take a while to get back to their property, they are at risk for being disenfranchised from voting. This is a very critical matter. I sent a letter detailing the actual problem that's happened to Gessler's office, and I got basically, the law is what the law is, and you guys are all screwed. Let me explain what happens. When an address change is put into the Postal Service, the voting laws that were changed last year and signed so gleefully by our governor made some very serious flaws injected into the system. And one of those flaws is that they take on a periodic basis a database from the Postal Service and automatically change your voter registration. It's automatic, and you don't know it happens. So, everyone who was displaced and put in a change of address to get your mail wherever you're living, and I've been through 3 address changes, and believe me, it's still a nightmare in the 7 places we've lived at. That's caused my voter registration to change. And according to Wayne Williams, our clerk, we do not have to have our registration changed because we were displaced by the disaster.
Right.
I can maintain the precinct that I lived and voted within in Black Forest, even though I'm not there right now, because it was destroyed. However, the system that was put into place automatically changes it. That means I have a Falcon address right now, and if I had done nothing to discover that this was going on and to try and thwart it, I would magically receive a ballot for Falcon And that's not where I want to vote. And so everyone in this state, not just Black Forest people, but everyone in this state who's been displaced by floods and fire, are now at risk for not getting to vote where they want to vote. And I think you all should complain to your representation. They will do nothing, as far as I can tell right now, because of the political climate in this state. So the only fallback position you have is to constantly, and I use the word constantly, monitor what your voter registration details are, and change them when they change out of your control, and you change them back. Okay? There's a website for you to do this. You may also call Liz Olson down at the county, and she knows all about this. I've been on many hours on the phone with her over these issues. They basically say their hands are tied because the law says they are doing that now. And nobody's willing to fix that problem. So you have to be aware. So our community is not aware of this. And it will be too late when the primaries happen in a few months for you to discover that you aren't getting the ballot you expected to get, if you get one at all. So what I recommend to people is tell everybody you know that your voter, if they're displaced, if they've done any kind of address change, that they need to contact either the El Paso County Voter Office, or go onto the state website, where you can put in a couple of your credentials. It's not very secure, believe it or not, but you can put in some of your credentials, and it will tell you what your registration is. Know this, there are two addresses associated with a voter registration. One is your residence, and that designates what precinct you are in, and who and what you would get to vote for in any given election. The other is a place to mail your ballot.
Right. I have an article in Black Forest News about that this week.
So what you want to do is you want to make sure, if you want to vote where you lived, even though you're not there right now, that your residence address in that database is where you want to be the precinct for your voting. And where you want to receive your ballot in your displaced location, Falcon for my case, is that's your mailing address. And the ballots will go out, be mailed to you, and you should get your correct ballot. But I can't emphasize enough, mine's changed twice already. It keeps getting changed, and changes and takes it away from Black Forest. And so the only thing you can do is be diligent and continuously monitor it right up until the elections. Now we have a primary at some point, and then we will have a main election in November. So you're going to have to monitor this carefully. The thing is, I don't think the public knows much about this. We need to tell everybody, because this disenfranchises you. And if there's one thing, that I just am so emphatic about, that this fire is not going to let me do, is be disenfranchised with impacting through our representation what we need to have in our state. And so I think it's a very important issue. The newspapers, other than Judy now, seemingly don't care or know. So you've got to tell your friends and neighbors, tell people who are displaced, that they need to go and make sure their voter registration can be where they wanted it to be, that they were displaced from, and where they have the ballot to be sent. And they get to control that, and they need to make sure it's done, because the post office data will change it automatically, and you won't even know.
Is the vote for Black Forest Fire Board the 6th of next month?
That's what this is about.
It's the 6th of next month. You can go
No,
to
it's
any
May.
DMV.
It's May.
Pardon me?
But is this a paper ballot that gets mailed? Then if
You won't even get the ballot if you aren't signed up right.
I went to the Black Forest
So I don't
Fire
know anything
Department. They
about
said they would send me a ballot. They wouldn't let me pick one up. I said, how about all the other people that displaced?
That's a very,
you
that
guys
was a
need
very
to do more
important
on
point.
letting people know about
So we
this.
need to
Can I
work with
tag
our
on to that?
clerk and recorder and see if we can get.
They've been very
press-
helpful, but
press
they say
release out.
our hands are tied in why this is being done. And so to fix it is a legislative thing, and there's no
interest in fixing this because they created this on purpose.
I appreciate that point. Okay, we'll go to Judy and then PJ.
Yeah, I got into this mess after, I talked to Ryan Parcell in Wayne Williams' office the other day about this, because people were saying, well, what do we do about this fire district election, because the ballots are gonna be mailed, and we know the US mail does not forward ballots. Well, neither do they forward your license renewal, so go check the month on your sticker. Okay, mine all expired in February. I went down yesterday and renewed them, okay? But the other thing I had done was I had managed to misplace the driver's license that I had just gotten done at the beginning of June before my birthday, which is June 12th. Okay, so I go to get my driver's license renewed, so they want a photo ID. with my, you know, and so I had to go do the licensing for my vehicles first and get that changed at the state level. I had no problem with that because I didn't have to produce a utility bill and all this other stuff. And then I went back and got the driver's license replaced. You know, but it's a very complicated thing. But what I put in here, and there's a little article right here underneath Bill Capital's thing, says to receive a ballot to vote in the May 6th special district election. And there's also another whole set of rules for special districts that just became law a week ago Monday. And nobody seems to understand these. But yes, you would be able to go to the fire department, like they're supposed to mail out the ballots the 18th of April. Okay, there's a schedule, there's a calendar for all special districts in the state that they have to follow. So if you don't get a ballot and you want to vote, you can go to the fire department and get a replacement ballot. They have to give you one up to a certain time just before that happens. And I've been in touch with Donna Arkowski, who's the election official, and she's got all of this figured out. And so I don't think we need to worry about it. But you've got to have the address right at the county clerk's office.
Which address will they be using?
They will use the address off the county clerk's database.
But there's two. Remember, Judy, there are two addresses with every voter registration.
Right,
there's a precinct residence address and a place to mail your ballot
Right,
address.
so you have to have, and you can go online, the county clerk has an online registration where you can change your mailing address. Leave your house address the same. So my burned house is 8255 Forsyth Circle. Okay, the mail that is sent there inadvertently is supposed to be forwarded to my post office box. Okay, they won't forward my ballot, so I have to make sure that wherever I want my ballot, whether it's where I'm living or at my P.O. box, is registered with the county clerk. Okay, then it will be sent directly to me properly. But the citizen has to take the initiative to make sure that that loop is closed, otherwise you're not going to get your ballot. You'll have to go get one by hand.
We have one question in the back of that.
Okay.
Go ahead,
PJ Lang, maybe. I discovered this problem dealing with mortgage bills and insurance paperwork, primarily banking statements and mortgage statements. I went to the postmaster and said, I need a solution as to how you're going to deliver mail to me, because I need all of these things. And the simplest solution I came up with to get rid of the bureaucracy was a keyed mailbox. It cost me $70 at Home Depot. I installed it on the burned out property, and I get all of my mail. I've had no problem since, because everything is sent to my address. And I don't give anybody my apartment address where I'm in the city, so there's no confusion. So something to consider would be $70, put the mailbox out there, and that loop is closed.
Thank you for sharing. Yes, sir.
In that same vein, U.S. Post Office, Postal Service, a couple of things happened. We initially had the general delivery pickup at the post office, and they ceased. They wouldn't allow you to do that anymore. I believe it was October. And we had to make a decision of, and we learned that if we used our son, we're living in our son's basement, if we used our son's address as our new address, then when we left his house, all the mail, his wife, and kids' mail would come to our new address. So we didn't want that. So we chose to buy an in post office rent, a post office box, $124, P.O. box. Well, they'll only forward your mail for 6 months. We're coming up on that 6-month anniversary. So my important thing to you, no matter where your mail is forwarded, be it to a P.O. box or another residence,
Go down and vote.
go down or go, well, I went online, frankly, just a couple days ago, costs $1.05 to extend that for 6 months. 6 months gets us up to September. By then, at the end of September, October 1st, that's our move-in date for our new home. So we'll change our address again. But be careful how you forward your address because it has unintended consequences.
What's the address that you go to forward it online? You know,
Oh,
send
I
it.
just went to USPS,
Just
yeah,
USPS.
and then drove through.
Any other last minute comments? Okay, well, again, we have another United Policyholder meeting. I think we already mentioned that for March 6th. Our next fourth long-range recovery meeting will be March 26th. Same time, same location. And again, I thank you very much. Look forward to continuing to work with you through this process. So have a good evening.
Thank you.